Simple projects are probably the easiest way to level up your skill as a woodworker. Though this tray design is very simple, I took this opportunity to do something I've never done before, which is bent lamination. It's a process of gluing up thin strips of wood against a form to create different shapes. In this case, it's the subtle curves at the end. I also wanted to incorporate metal in this project as well. The first thing I need to do was create the formwork that will be used to create the curve. I'm using 3/4 inch plywood, and since I had designed the project digitally, it was easy to create the file for my CNC to cut out. My original thought was to create 2 pieces and then sandwich the thin strips of wood in between the 2 forms, but in the end, using only half of the form worked out so much better and would have saved me a lot of plywood. It'll make sense a little later. Once I got all the pieces flushed, I'll go ahead and glue and nail them together. With the form done, I can start milling the wood. For this project, I'm using Teak since it has a natural oil which makes it great for wet environments. Since the tray has a metal handle that's integrated in the middle, I needed to create the tray in 3 sections, 2 end pieces and a short middle section. And since this is my first time experimenting with bent lamination, I wanted the pieces to be somewhat manageable. So I ripped the boards into about 3.5 inch sections before resawing them on the bandsaw. I highly suggest resawing these pieces as thin as possible. My thought was, since the curve is pretty subtle, 1/8 of an inch was going to work fine. And with the bandsaw marks left on the surface of each piece, I thought I would have a lot more sanding to do in order to get each piece flush against each other so that there wouldn't be a gap between each lamination. I ended up not sanding the pieces, and I think the amount of glue that I used covered up all the gaps that I thought would have shown on the edges. However, the 1/8 inch thickness, even though this is a subtle curve, ended up cracking on me. So to be on the safe side, go as thin as possible. This does get pretty messy, so I laid out my rubber mat on my workbench and used some plastic wrap in between the form and the actual lamination. That way the boards won't stick to the form and I can reuse them afterwards. As I mentioned before, I started off with using both pieces of the form, but gluing up the strips in between was a nightmare. I had to slowly clamp down, add more clamps, clamp down again, add more clamps, and repeat the process until enough clamps were in place. And if I didn't apply even pressure, the form would actually move, which meant that the actual lamination was not bent in the correct place or angle. It was much easier to actually clamp down on the strips versus clamping the 2 halves together. It also meant that I was able to get more lamination done at one time. And here's the actual crack on the board that was not thin enough. Before I continue, I wanted to say thank you to Fleximount for sponsoring a portion of this video. In Texas, we don't have a basement for storage. In the attic, well, it can get very hot and difficult to move things in and out. This usually means that our garage is used as excess storage space rather than parking our cars. I like the storage solution that Fleximount offers. This is their classic overhead garage storage racks. They offer these in various sizes, however, I opt for the 4-foot by 8-foot model. The system was easy to put together and it holds up to 600 pounds. It has height adjustments for garages with higher ceilings. For this garage, the shortest height at 22 inches worked out great. If you want to learn more, there is a link in the description for more information. Thanks Fleximount. Now, back to the build. With the pieces dried, I flushed off one edge on my jointer. This will remove the glue and give me a reference surface to cut off the other edge on my table saw. Now that the boards are trimmed on both edges, I'll glue the two center boards together first. That way I can trim the ends off since they will be shorter than the outside pieces to give some room for the metal handles. From there, I can glue one outside piece to the middle section. This will help me establish where the metal handles will go so I can drill out the location on my drill press. As I set that to dry, I'll cut the metal handles out from some round stock I found online. I'm cutting these longer so that they are embedded about half of an inch into each of the outside panels. To mark the hole location, I wanted to make sure that the bar will be parallel to the center panel and center on the edge of the outside panels. Once I have the locations marked, I can drill out the holes on my drill press, then finally glue the outside panel, which will sandwich the metal bar in place. Before I trim the tray to the right width, I'll give everything a good sanding to get rid of any dry glue on the surface. But I want to take this time to say thank you all for your support on my channel. It's been a long journey and I'm glad to share this woodworking process with you. It would be awesome if you could click that like button if you enjoyed this video and any other videos that you've seen on my channel. Also, subscribe and share this video. Try my best to keep the videos consistent as possible, and your support helps so much. So, thank you. So the final piece that I need to add was the base. This is going to elevate the tray up just a little bit. I simply used glue and clamped it in place, then let it dry overnight before applying the finish. For this, I'm using my current favorite finish, Rubio Monocoat. It's a super easy finish to apply, and once it dries, the finish is very durable. Not to mention, it smells very good too. It is a two-part finish. There is the oil portion and the accelerator. You can use the finish without the accelerator, but the cure times will be a lot longer. With the accelerator, the cure time is around 5 days. And with that, this project's done. If you're starting out woodworking or have been doing this for a while, don't be afraid to try new techniques. You will fail, as I did, but the knowledge gained will far outweigh the failures. As makers or creators, it's probably the aspect we love about what we do. It's a small step we take to make something unique and beautiful. Until next time, this has been Bao Design Craft Workshop. See ya.